All right. Sometimes I launch into these things and I don't know where I'm going to end up. It's kind of interesting. All right. Anyone like to speak? I know that may be a little difficult thing to follow, but difficult act to follow, but wherever you want to go, whatever's going on, whatever happened this week, whatever came up in you listening to this, whatever your own experience has been.
So when you said that the time or the moment of your talk or your meditation is gone, my feeling was, yeah, but it became part of us. So I don't really see it totally as gone, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right.
But
Yes.
there's a really good saying that's on my wall, and it says, "Lost man's birth, and the two are lovers."
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a stream of causality that we are in. So, yes, if something's lost, something's born.
Yeah, that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why is it so rare, do you think, Mark? It's precious for sure, all the things you just articulated so well, these things, these insights we can cultivate in our lives. But throughout history, it's always been kind of rare and precious. Uh, the amount of people who touch that, as opposed to just look what's going on in the world, near
Mm-hmm.
and far.
Yeah. It's understandable that people run screaming from their pain, you know? And I find it, I feel very grateful to have encountered the Dharma at some point in my life, young, and have it pointed out that, either way there's pain. You can run from it or you can face it. You can turn toward it, you can turn away from it and go through these various sorts of shenanigans to not face the things that are difficult. Either way, it's painful. And in some way, it's more painful not to face it in the long run because it compounds. Not facing the things that are hard, not facing the things that are painful, they compound. And I also want to mention, I think there's a deep element of human community too that is around loss. I didn't really mention it in my talk, but it's coming to me now, and around pain. That there's something about the presence of others that allows us to do that, allows us to turn towards the realities of loss, the realities of pain, the reality of really realizing what we don't control. Um, there's comfort with in other people. So it wasn't as if I just as a lonely individual heard a teaching and it was meaningful to me in my life. There's something irreplaceable about a community of people who talk about these things, who you know, make this a part of their culture. And so it's not a part of the life or culture of many people.
It's like a thread that runs through humanity, and it's stronger here and here or there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it runs through humanity. It always keeps popping up, because it's our situation. there's a lot of trauma to living, but it's like if you stand still and let it catch up to you, it can be metabolized. If you keep turning away, it can't be. And sometimes it needs a lot, you need a lot of coaching to know how to stand still and let it be metabolized, let it be digested. It takes a lot. So I don't feel a lot of judgment about the world for, what people do, the crazy things people do um, to not feel in pain.
Two things came to mind. Today I happened to listen to Ezra Klein podcast interviewing Pima children, and it was wonderful, very adjacent to this class. A wonderful discussion. I think once they used the word surrender, but danced around it a lot, and also the topic of how do you discern when it's appropriate to surrender versus when you need to take action. I just thought I'd mention it because I've never heard her interviewed. It was just beautiful. I have to listen to it again. She's delightful.
She is.
She's delightful. And he did a wonderful interview, and he was very vulnerable and very honest about, like, it's taking me years to sit with things and my discomfort. And I thought, oh, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did she have to say about the discernment between when to act and when to surrender?
She gave an example of a woman, she must have been at a talk or something, who was in a difficult situation in a marriage where it was essentially abusive. And she said, obviously, you're not going to suggest that that woman sits with her discomfort and accepts this is the way it is. But that was very obvious. So she admitted that it was difficult sometimes to discern.
Right.
And that's something I've struggled with, like, and I think I mentioned a few classes ago, someone bringing up like Byron Katie, and I thought her approach might be helpful at times to say, do I accept what is versus does there need to be action? But I think that's one of the most difficult things. And I'm not sure I want to listen again because after it was all said and done and I got home, I thought, did she answer that question? Like I remember the example, like that woman who obviously should have left her situation, but I have to listen again. Yeah. Just the other thing about grief, I guess I'm really fortunate this time in my life. I haven't had to suffer that much with grief, but I've witnessed so much of it. And it can be an incredible experience to sit with people who are in grief. And I started taking classes maybe with you, maybe 3 or so years ago, and I started to become more aware of, like, obviously there's suffering with all grief, but the resistance creates so much more suffering.
Yes.
So much more suffering. The resistance and the struggling with the reality versus people who, like, as Leslie said, now your talk is part of us, people who sort of embrace and honor the memory of this person and find a way in their life to sort of carry them. I had met one woman who had lost a son to suicide, and her son loved a particular color lipstick, and she had tons of this lipstick, and she would never leave the house. She would slap it on, and that was sort of taking him with her in a very sort of simple way. But it was just a privilege to sit with people through all different kinds of grief, and I think I learned a lot from that, hopefully. But it's a great privilege, and it's also very, very difficult.
And you have to be comfortable in yourself with
Oh, yeah.
with them grieving.
Yes, you want to take their pain away, but the truth is they
Mhm.
just need to sit with them.
Right.
And
It brings up often this sense of, we don't like feeling helpless. And so sitting with somebody else's helplessness can be very difficult, but it's actually what they need. Someone's presence saying it's actually okay. It's okay to go through this passage.
yeah, and it's one of the most intimate human experiences, if you can tolerate it. And I
Mhm.
at times found it really difficult, but when I was able to be present, it was really rewarding for me in a strange way.
It is. It's very intimate.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane. See, Jim.
Every once in a while, I go into the thinking of, oh, this moment is gone, never to be retrieved again. And I go, oh, this doesn't feel good.
Hmm.
Uh, and you talked about standing still and metabolizing. And if a moment is gone, I suppose it's just the memory you're metabolizing. But it's hard for me, I mean, as you get older and you realize these moments are passing faster and faster, that it's hard not to think, oh, I got to do something. So anyway, that thought comes up every once in a while. I mean, and I go, oh, I don't know what to do with that. That's a tough one. Um,
Mhm. And you don't have to do anything with it.
I know you don't.
Kind of drop down into your heart and just witness it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it just is, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
there's also a moment of kind of not knowing. We don't know the nature of time. We live in it, from our experience, it's kind of unidirectional and things are disappearing. We don't know what time is.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
So, from our experience, it's all lost, but who knows exactly?
Right.
I think of this sometimes about my youth. There's just some wonderful things about my youth and the world I grew up in and on the farm and my parents and the culture of that place and the old people who remembered the horse days. And there's just a whole world and it's gone.
On. It is.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
in me. Yes, but
Yeah.
it's kind of it just I contemplate that and it's kind of just let myself be boggled. Just let it myself be boggled. That something so precious and beautiful could have come into being in the world and not be here anymore.
An appreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And there are still beautiful things being in the world. It's not like that was it and now there's nothing more. As Leslie pointed out, there's everything new being born as things pass away. But
Right.
it's a huge thing, I feel, for the heart to get itself big enough to comprehend, not comprehend, that sounds much too much about thought, but you
Well,
know, to
sort of like accessing the heart so it can provide, give us what it is, what it can
yeah,
see, what it can experience.
yes. So we can love that.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. And be at peace.
Okay.
That's what I mean by comprehend.
Got it.
That level of understanding.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Seems like an odd season to talk about loss. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah,
Springtime just feels like the opposite.
right. And I think the when I was listening to what you were saying tonight, the point about the illusion that we live in, or we don't really think or talk about loss or the end of life regularly. And it's something that's happening all the time, all around us, but it's this hush hush topic.
Right.
And it's been certainly in my life not something that would be even welcomed to discuss. And even with my own parents and my mom, she spent 80 years of controlling everything around her. And I think witnessing and being there at the end of her life in those moments, the last 8 hours, it's such an experience and lesson about the nature of life, and that no matter how many times somebody's going to say, which is the illusion, I'm never going anywhere, I'm going to be here forever, and I hear parents telling their kids all the time, Mommy's going to be here always. And it seems like a cultural odd message.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a new appreciation about the true moments when you actually witness, you bear witness to the moments of leaving our living our living selves. And it does change everything. It would be nice to have those lessons really early on in life. I mean, nice is an odd way to put it, but I think it changes living when you focus on the end.
Yes. You live differently in the light of death, in the light of impermanence.
Right. And
Death sheds light of a certain sort on life.
right. And to only find that in 8 hours at the end, that's mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who's living in that illusion until the end.
Right.
And that's a hard moment to witness. Those are hard moments to witness.
Mm-hmm.
And then to feel that grief of really what was that loss? It's not just the loss of the person to you, but the loss of enlightenment earlier in life, understanding, which, Chad, it seems like the world is missing this. So many people, right? I think that's sort of where you were going with that.
Certainly, our Western world has lost its kind of way around death. And even I think of my youth, I went to so many funerals growing up because I was a part of a community, a church, and a small town community. And it was just like, people died, animals died, things died. It was just unavoidable. And I think many people's experience now is that, maybe it's their grandparents dying is the first time that they encounter death, because we don't live in these sort of multi-generational communities anymore. And, even then it was weird, the embalming and all the whatever. It had a certain strangeness about it, but there was contact with it. But, even in my generation, people no longer handled bodies. It used to be a common human experience to handle dead bodies, to bathe them, to dress them, and we don't have any contact like that anymore.
It's so rare to see a dead body,
It's a very rare thing now.
unless you're in the field of dog,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah,
know?
certainly animals. You can see that
Yeah.
doesn't quite have the same impact.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you can make a practice of contemplating death. It's a big part of Buddhism, actually, big part of many religions. It's not just a Buddhist thing. I know in India, people will go and do contemplations at the burning ghats. Watching bodies burn, just to like actually really get the consciousness deep in themselves of this is what a body is, and this is what happens. This is what will happen to my body. This is what I am. And
Wow.
and on a simpler level, you can arrange things to put yourself in contact with death in that way. But I think on a simpler level, have part of your mindfulness be just the recognition of what's present is not always going to be here. This house that you're in, this person that you're with, this animal that you're with, just that momentary kind of recognition of, oh, this won't last forever. It shifts something. It wakes you up. All right. Anything more, Lisa?
Yeah.
You feel complete? Okay. Thank you. All right. We have a little more time. Go ahead, Jean.
Um, I was really struck by your use of the word metabolize today, and I like what Jim said about our how are we metabolizing something that has already passed. That was so interesting, and I feel like this ties into something you said earlier about how it might have been during the meditation or when you were speaking about how sometimes we can become more present when we're in our heart space or our admin versus kind of lost in our maybe like our thought or our mind. Um, and I don't want to sound like I'm like searching for silver lining or like having like toxic positivity, but I've been through so many losses in my life that when I'm on the other side of them, they've been such blessings. Um, we had a fire in 2009. We lost most of our things, and it was such a blessing because my kids were okay. And then I was in a tornado in 2011. I lost my house, and then I realized, oh, my house is just a thing. And I've lost relationships, and I've had a lot of these challenging experiences in my life that feel almost like hard to even survive in the moment. But then Lisa Miller talks about in her book, The Awakened Brain, how when you have those moments when it's like the trapdoor troughs out and you feel like you're going to fall into nothing, you experience this buoyancy, you experience this, there is something there. And to me, I've had that
Yes.
experience so many times again and again that I have no doubt, and this is not a cognitive thing, this is experiential.
No, it has to be experiential. You can't think yourself there, but this kind of buoyancy
Yes.
is your nature.
Yes, and I have to say,
Yeah.
Leslie said earlier something along the lines of how we take these meditations with us. And many years ago, when you were teaching this class at Amherst College, and you talked about the idea of how at our core, one of the teachings is something about we're sorrowless, stainless, and secure, and that there's
Yes.
nothing that can add to or take away from who we are. And in those moments in my life, when I feel like, again, where it feels like the bottom should be gone, and I can't endure, I find that there is this piece of me that's still at peace. There's a part in my heart and and it's not even myself. There's like it's that larger field of consciousness or that larger sense of being alive and part of something greater. It's almost like you lose the ego a little bit. But I guess my point, to go back to, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. To go back to the metabolizing, What I do find though is as a, human being here in this lifetime, there are those moments like Jim said, like the memory comes back up. And I always hear this jargon about how we can process our trauma or process, like metabolize those things. And I'm just curious, like, is that actually possible? Because I feel like that's sometimes the biggest hang up. It's not actually surviving the experience, it's the waves of maybe the unprocessed, non-metabolized
Yeah,
emotion that come back. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
exactly. It's all the unprocessed feelings that come up around the loss,
Okay.
the fear, the grief, the helplessness, all that. But that's part of what you described as a passage, is as you go through those losses that in the time seemed like they're insurmountable. And then somehow you find yourself on the other side. There's like a purification, there's a cleansing that happens. And it has nothing to do with the mind, it has to do with our deeper being. And what you described as buoyancy is beautiful, that there's a sense of indestructibility that emerges. The sorrowless, stainless, and secure, that is actually the heart of what we are. The sorrowless, the sorrowless light, which is willing to know sorrow, willing to pass through sorrow. It's not like sorrow, like it's sorrowless means we got to keep it all away. It means actually that it's truly indestructible.
Yeah. I find in the you've used the term emptiness before, and I think through some of the experiences I've had where instead of emptiness, there's almost resonance. There's some sort of tether or anchor to something else that is, I don't have language for it. Like the linguistics you put
Mhm.
around things, I think point towards,
Yeah,
but I think it's
I agree. The word emptiness can be misleading.
mm, yeah. Now, at some point, if you ever have any thoughts on how you metabolize or process some of those slippery things that still crop back up, I'd love to hear your thoughts at some point.
All
Thanks.
right, maybe we'll have a class on metabolizing. I like that word too. All right, folks, we're at our time for tonight. I'll see you next week and be well.